The phone buzzed against my kitchen counter, and I knew before looking that it was Dad. November 15th, same as every year, his annual Thanksgiving summons disguised as an invitation. My hands trembled slightly as I swiped to answer, already feeling that familiar knot forming in my stomach. Marjorie, your mother and I expect you at 3 o'clock sharp this year. None of that fashionably late nonsense. His voice carried that tone I'd learned to dread, the one that meant he'd already decided how things would go, and my opinion was irrelevant. I pressed my palm against the granite countertop, grounding myself. Dad, I actually wanted to talk to you about Thanksgiving. Bryce and I were thinking of starting our own tradition this year, maybe having dinner at our place instead. The silence stretched so long, I wondered if the call had dropped. Then came that laugh, the one that made me feel 12 years old again, standing in his office while he explained why I wasn't smart enough for the advanced math class I'd begged to take. Thanksgiving is for real family, Marjorie. Stay away if you want to play house with your little boyfriend, but don't expect us to pretend it matters. The words hit like a physical blow, but it was his next comment that made my vision blur. Maybe when you grow up and stop being so selfish, you'll understand what family actually means. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my reflection in the black screen. I sat there staring at my phone for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped rubber bands around my ribs and kept pulling them tighter. This wasn't new. Dad had been cutting me down my entire life, but something about today felt different. Maybe it was the way he'd said real family, like 32 years of being his daughter meant nothing. Bryce found me still sitting at the kitchen island when he got home from work, his tool belt still hanging around his waist, construction dust in his dark hair. Hey, beautiful, how was your... He stopped mid-sentence, taking in my expression. What happened? I loved that about him. No small talk, no pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. He'd learned to read me over the past 2 years, learned that my family could reduce me to rubble with a single phone call. Dad called about Thanksgiving. I didn't need to say more. Bryce knew the drill, knew about the annual command performances, the way my parents treated me like an inconvenient obligation rather than their only child. He pulled out the stool next to me, his calloused hand covering mine. Let me guess, your way or the highway? I nodded, feeling that familiar burning behind my eyes. But then something shifted in my chest, a hardening I'd never felt before. He said I'm not real family. The words came out flat, emotionless. Bryce's jaw tightened. He'd met my parents exactly once, at my birthday dinner last year. They'd spent the entire evening treating him like hired help, asking pointed questions about his career prospects and whether he planned to make something of himself. I'd apologized for weeks afterward, but Bryce had just held me and said what mattered was how I felt, not them. You know what the crazy part is? I continued, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. I've been paying their heating bill for 3 years, $6,500 every winter, automatically deducted from my account. They don't even know I know about their financial troubles. I pulled up my banking app, scrolling to the scheduled payment. Mom mentioned it once, crying about how expensive everything was getting. So I called the utility company, set up the payments anonymously. They think it's some kind of assistance program. Bryce stared at the phone screen showing the scheduled payment, his expression shifting from confusion to something harder. Wait, you've been paying their heating bill? For 3 years? I nodded, suddenly feeling foolish. Marjorie, that's a lot of money. Money we could have used for the house down payment or your student loans or... He caught himself, running a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. It's your money. Why didn't you tell me? The question hung between us like smoke. Why hadn't I told him? Because admitting I was still trying to buy my parents' love at 32 felt pathetic. Because explaining that I'd rather go without vacation or new clothes than let them freeze felt too complicated. Because some part of me hoped that if I just gave enough, did enough, they'd finally see me as worthy of basic respect. "They're my parents," I said weakly, but the words tasted sour. Bryce's expression softened, and he pulled me against his chest, his work shirt rough against my cheek. "You're a good daughter, Marge. Better than they deserve." His voice was gentle, but I could hear the anger underneath. Not at me, but for me. That distinction mattered more than he'd ever know. I pulled back, looking at my phone again. The payment was scheduled for tomorrow, like always. December 1st, right when the cold really hit. My finger hovered over the cancel button. What if I didn't pay it this year? The words came out barely above a whisper. Bryce went very still. What if I just stopped? "You mean permanently?" I could hear him trying to keep his voice neutral, not wanting to influence me either way. That was Bryce, always letting me make my own decisions, even when he probably had opinions, especially when it came to my family. I mean, what would happen if I canceled it right now? If they had to figure out their own heating bill for once? My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. This felt bigger than money. It felt like cutting the last thread that connected me to them, the thread I'd been clinging to, hoping it meant something. They told me I'm not real family, so maybe it's time I stopped acting like one. Before I could lose my nerve, I pressed cancel. The payment disappeared from my scheduled transactions. $6,500 staying in my account for the first time in 3 years. The next few days passed in a strange haze. I kept checking my bank account, almost expecting the payment to reappear, like my finger had never pressed that button. But there it was. Or rather, there it wasn't. $6,500 sitting in my checking account instead of flowing to the gas company. I felt sick and liberated at the same time, like I'd jumped off a cliff and wasn't sure if I was flying or falling. Bryce didn't push, but I caught him watching me with those careful eyes contractors develop. The look that says they're calculating load-bearing walls and wondering what might collapse. Wednesday night, 2 days before Thanksgiving, he finally spoke up while we were making dinner. "You know you don't have to go tomorrow, right? We could drive up to my sister's place in Burlington, or just stay here and make our own turkey." His hands were steady as he chopped onions, but I could hear the question underneath. "Are you okay?" "I'm not going." The words came out firmer than I expected. I'm done pretending that showing up to be insulted counts as family time. Bryce nodded, relief evident in the way his shoulders dropped. "Good. You deserve better than that." We ate pasta and watched old movies, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't have that familiar knot of dread in my stomach about the approaching holiday. Thursday morning arrived crisp and bright. While other families were arguing over turkey temperatures and football games, Bryce and I slept in, made pancakes, and took a long walk through the neighborhood. I kept my phone on silent, ignoring the inevitable calls and texts from my parents demanding to know where I was. Around noon, curiosity finally got the better of me. 7 missed calls from Mom. 12 text messages, escalating from confused to angry to pleading. "Where are you?" "Your father is furious. This is so disrespectful. Please come. I made your favorite stuffing. Marjorie, answer your phone. You're breaking my heart." I showed them to Bryce, who read over my shoulder with increasing disgust. "Look at that," he said quietly. "Not one of them asks if you're okay or apologizes for what your dad said. It's all about how your absence affects them." He was right. Even Mom's guilt trips were about her feelings, her heart, her disappointment. Nothing about why I might have chosen to stay away. Nothing acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, being told you're not real family might hurt enough to keep someone home on Thanksgiving. The weekend passed quietly, But Monday brought the call I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Mom's number flashed on my screen at 8 in the morning, and something in my gut told me this wasn't about leftover turkey or hurt feelings. I answered on the fourth ring, my coffee mug trembling slightly in my free hand. Marjorie. Her voice was different, strained in a way I'd never heard before. We need to talk. No hello, no how are you, just straight to business. My mother, who could stretch a conversation about the weather into a 20-minute ordeal, was being direct. That scared me more than yelling would have. The heating assistant stopped. The words came out flat, factual. 3 years of help, and suddenly nothing. The gas company says the program that was covering our bill just ended. $6,500, Marjorie. That's what we owe now, and winter's barely started. I could hear Dad in the background, his voice a low rumble of anger that I couldn't quite make out. They're threatening to shut off our heat if we don't pay by Friday. My heart was hammering, but I kept my voice steady. That's terrible, Mom. Have you looked into other assistance programs? The silence stretched so long, I wondered if she'd hung up. Then came something I'd never heard from my mother before, a sob. Not the delicate tears she used to manipulate Dad into buying her things, but real, raw crying. We can't afford it, Marjorie. Your father's pride won't let him admit it, but we're barely scraping by since he retired. The house payment, the medical bills from his heart surgery last year. We've been living on credit cards and prayer. Another sob. I don't know what we're going to do. Part of me wanted to cave right then, to transfer the money and pretend none of this had happened. But Bryce's words echoed in my head. Even now, she wasn't asking about me. She wasn't acknowledging what Dad had said or apologizing for how they treated me. She was just expecting me to fix their problem like I always had, invisibly and without recognition. Mom! My voice came out steadier than I felt. Did you ever wonder where that assistance came from? 3 years of perfect timing, covering your exact heating costs? The crying stopped abruptly. In the background, Dad's rumbling went quiet too. Did you ever think to ask questions about a program that seemed too good to be true? The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. They were starting to put the pieces together. Marjorie. Dad's voice came through the phone now, sharp and demanding. He'd taken the phone from Mom, and I could picture him standing in their kitchen, his face that particular shade of red that meant he was about to explode. What exactly are you implying? But underneath the bluster, I heard something I'd never heard from him before. Uncertainty. Fear, maybe. I'm not implying anything, Dad. I'm asking a direct question. In 3 years, did you ever wonder who was paying your heating bill? Did you ever think it was strange that this mystery assistance program covered your exact costs, down to the penny, every single year? My hands were shaking now, but my voice held steady. Bryce appeared in the doorway, drawn by my tone, and leaned against the frame with his arms crossed, ready to catch me if I fell. You. The word came out like an accusation. You've been... How did you even... We never asked you for anything! His voice cracked on the last word, which would have been funny if my heart wasn't trying to beat out of my chest. We never asked you for money! No, you didn't ask. You just let me know how much you were struggling, how worried you were about the bills, how expensive everything was getting. And then you acted surprised when help magically appeared. I took a shaky breath. You know what's funny, Dad? You've been living off my charity for 3 years while treating me like I don't matter, telling me I'm not real family while I kept you warm through 3 winters. Mom's voice came through faintly. She was crying again, but softer now. Marjorie, we didn't know. We thought it was from the county or the church assistance program. Her words trailed off, probably realizing how thin that sounded. They'd been so eager to accept help from strangers. but they'd never once considered that their own daughter might be the source. "Well, now you know," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "And now you also know why the assistant stopped. You told me Thanksgiving was for real family, Dad, so I figured my money should go to real family, too." The silence stretched so long I wondered if they'd hung up. Then Dad's voice came back, smaller somehow, stripped of its usual authority. "Marjorie, wait. We can talk about this. Maybe we said some things." But I was already moving, already deciding. For the first time in my life, I was the one with the power to end a conversation with my parents. "I have to go, Dad. Good luck with the heating bill." I hung up before he could respond, my finger trembling as it hit the red button. The phone started ringing again immediately, but I just stared at it, buzzing on the counter like an angry wasp. Bryce walked over and gently turned it face down, then pulled me into his arms. I wasn't crying. I felt too empty for tears. Instead, there was this strange lightness in my chest, like I'd been holding my breath for 32 years and finally exhaled. "How do you feel?" he asked carefully, his chin resting on top of my head. It was such a simple question, but no one in my family had ever asked it. They told me how I should feel, or how my feelings were wrong, or how my feelings affected them, but never just, "How do you feel?" "Free," I said, and meant it. Terrified, but free. The calls kept coming every few hours for the next 2 days. I let them all go to voicemail, but I listened to each one, watching my parents' tactics evolve in real time. First came anger, Dad's voice tight with rage, demanding I call back immediately, threatening to drive over if I didn't respond. Then came bargaining, Mom's trembling voice promising they'd do better, that they could work things out as a family. By Wednesday, desperation had set in. "Marjorie, please." Mom's voice was barely above a whisper on the latest message. "The gas company is coming tomorrow to disconnect the service. It's supposed to snow this weekend. Your father, he's too proud to beg, but I'm not. I'm begging you. We'll pay you back somehow. We'll make this right. Just please don't let us freeze." That one almost broke me. I sat in my car outside the grocery store, listening to my mother plead through the phone speaker, and felt that familiar guilt creeping back in. The daughter they'd raised, trained to fix their problems and absorb their emotions, wanted to drive over with a check immediately. But something Bryce had said kept echoing in my head. You can't buy love that was never for sale. Instead of calling back, I did something I'd never done before. I called my Aunt Delilah, Dad's older sister who lived 2 states away, but somehow always knew the family gossip before anyone else. "Marge, honey, I was wondering when you'd finally call," she said without preamble. "I heard about Thanksgiving. And before you ask, your mother already called me crying about the heating bill situation." My stomach dropped. "She told you about the money?" Aunt Delilah laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Oh, honey, she told everyone. Called half the family looking for someone to bail them out. Told us all about their ungrateful daughter who'd been secretly paying their bills and then cut them off out of spite." The words hit like ice water. "She's been painting you as the villain in this story, sweetheart. Figured you should know." "Tell me your side," Aunt Delilah said firmly, "because the story I'm hearing doesn't sound like the niece I know." So I did. I told her everything. About Dad's dismissal at Thanksgiving, about 3 years of anonymous payments, about being called not real family while literally keeping them warm. I told her about the voicemails that never asked if I was okay, only demanded I fix their problem. Aunt Delilah listened without interrupting, making small humming sounds that I remembered from childhood visits. "Well, hell," she said finally. "That's not the story your mother told at all. She made it sound like you'd had some petty argument and decided to punish them financially." I could hear her lighting a cigarette, a habit she'd never quite shaken despite Uncle Morris's complaints. "Honey, I need you to know something. Your parents called me, your Uncle Morris, your cousin Brett. Even reached out to your father's old army buddy in Colorado. They're telling everyone you're having some kind of breakdown, that you've turned vindictive and cruel. The betrayal hit harder than I expected. It was one thing for them to treat me badly in private, but turning the entire family against me felt like a new level of cruelty. But here's the thing, Aunt Delilah continued, her voice getting sharper. I've watched your father dismiss you your whole life. I've seen how they treat you at family gatherings, like you're some obligation they're stuck with. So when your mother called crying about her ungrateful daughter, I had questions. My throat felt tight. What kind of questions? The kind that made her real uncomfortable, like why their daughter would suddenly turn on them after 32 years of being the perfect child. Like what exactly was said to make you skip Thanksgiving for the first time ever? Like why they never mentioned this mysterious heating assistance before, but now suddenly everyone needs to know their daughter was behind it. Aunt Delilah took a long drag. Funny how your mother got real quiet when I started asking specifics. Relief flooded through me so suddenly, I had to sit down. Someone believed me. Someone saw through their narrative. So what happens now? I asked, feeling like a lost child despite being a grown woman. Now you decide what kind of relationship you want with them going forward, she said simply. But honey, I need you to understand something. This isn't about the money anymore. This is about them realizing they can't control you, and they're panicking. People like your parents. They don't know how to love without control. When you took that power away, you broke something that can't be fixed. Her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. She was right. The heating bill was just money. But what I'd really canceled was their ability to take me for granted. Friday afternoon brought the confrontation I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. I was pulling into my driveway after work when I saw Dad's truck parked on the street, him and Mom sitting on my front porch like they belonged there. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. They'd never just shown up at my house before. This was a new level of desperation. I sat in my car for a full minute, watching them through the windshield. Mom looked smaller somehow, hunched in her winter coat despite the mild weather. Dad kept checking his watch, that familiar impatience radiating off him even from 50 feet away. When he spotted me in the car, he stood up and waved, like this was some casual social visit instead of an ambush. Marjorie, thank God! Mom rushed toward me as I got out of the car, her face tear-stained and puffy. We've been waiting for 2 hours. We need to talk. Dad followed more slowly, his expression harder to read than usual. For once, he wasn't leading the charge, wasn't immediately taking control of the situation. That scared me more than his anger would have. There's nothing to talk about, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You made your position clear on Thanksgiving. I'm not real family, remember? Dad flinched like I'd slapped him, and something in his face crumpled. Marjorie, I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. You know how I get when... When what, Dad? When someone doesn't do exactly what you want? When someone has the audacity to suggest their own plans? Mom stepped between us, her hands fluttering like nervous birds. Please, can we just go inside? The neighbors are starting to stare. She was right. Mrs. Chen across the street was pretending to water her already soaked plants while obviously listening. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care who was watching our family drama unfold. No, Mom, we're going to have this conversation right here, right now. My voice carried across the quiet street, and I saw Mrs. Chen give up all pretense of gardening. You want to know why I cut off your heating assistance? It's because I finally realized that no amount of money, no amount of helping, no amount of being the perfect daughter was ever going to make you treat me with basic respect. Dad's face went that familiar red, but when he opened his mouth, nothing came out. For the first time in my memory, my father was speechless. Mom tried to fill the silence. Honey, we appreciate everything you've done for us. We just didn't know it was you. And that's exactly the problem, I interrupted. You were perfectly happy accepting help from a stranger, but you've never once acknowledged that your own daughter might have something valuable to offer. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, while Mom's tears started flowing again. But this time, I didn't feel the familiar urge to comfort her, to fix whatever was broken. I just stood there, waiting. We raised you better than this, Dad finally managed, his voice shaky but still carrying that edge of authority he'd never learned to let go of. This isn't how family treats each other. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. You're right, Dad. This isn't how family treats each other. Family doesn't dismiss each other's feelings. Family doesn't tell their daughter she's not real family. And family sure as hell doesn't take anonymous charity for 3 years while treating the person providing it like garbage. Mom sobbed harder. We didn't know, Marjorie. How could we have known? But I was done with their ignorance as an excuse. You didn't know because you never asked questions. You never wondered where help came from because you felt entitled to it, just like you felt entitled to my time, my energy, my money, without ever giving anything back. Bryce's truck turned into the driveway then, and I felt relief flood through me. He took in the scene, my tear-stained parents, the gathered neighbors, my rigid posture, and walked straight to my side without a word. His presence steadied me, reminded me that I had real family now, chosen family that actually valued me. Here's what's going to happen, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. I'm going inside with Bryce. You're going to leave, and you're going to figure out your own heating bill, your own problems, your own lives without expecting me to fix them. Dad's face went purple. You can't just abandon your family. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just stopping the pretense that we were ever really family to begin with. Mom made one last desperate play. Marjorie, please, we love you. The words that might have broken me a month ago just bounced off now. No, Mom. You love what I do for you. You love having someone to control, someone to blame, someone to bail you out. But you've never loved me for who I am because you've never bothered to find out who that is. 6 months later, Aunt Delilah called to tell me they'd moved to a smaller apartment, that Dad had finally swallowed his pride and gotten a part-time job at the hardware store. They ask about you sometimes, she said carefully. Wonder how you're doing. I was doing fine. Better than fine. Bryce and I had put a down payment on our house. I'd started therapy, and for the first time in my life, I was sleeping through the night without worrying about who needed fixing. Tell them I'm real family now, I said, just not theirs.